This is episode 284 of Jumblethink.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Jumblethink, where we interview dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers all about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we're going to share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's show is Matt Sweetwood. More about Matt in a moment. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime fan, if you haven't subscribed already, right now is the best time to do it. How do you do it? Head on over to your favorite place to listen to podcasts. Search for Jumblethink and click that magical subscribe button. While you're there, leave us a rating and review so that others know what you think of the show too. Now let's jump into our conversation with today's guest, Matt Sweetwood. Hey there, welcome to Jumblethink. My name's Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get rolling, we want to thank our friends over at Penji for sponsoring today's show. Penji is your source for unlimited graphic design at a low subscription rate. They're doing something awesome for our listeners. They're going to give you 15% off your first month. All you have to do is head on over to penji.co. That's penji.co. Use the code JUMBLE, and they're going to give you 15% off your first month. We love their service, and we think you're going to love it too. So go check them out, penji.co. I am super excited about today's guest. His name is Matt Sweetwood. I met Matt just a little over a year ago, September of 2018, at New Media Summit in Austin, Texas. It was a super fun event, and he was one of my favorite people to meet there. Matt is the CEO of LuxNow. He is also a successful serial entrepreneur, a business consultant, an award-winning marketer, a social media influencer, a personal branding expert, and a photography instructor. Matt was the U.S. CEO of BB Inc., a professional social network that helps people build personal brands. He served as the president of Unique Photo, New Jersey's premier camera store, for over 28 years. Nationally known in the photography industry as an innovator, he has helped acquire over 50 U.S. and international trademarks for both language and design, and he founded and ran the Ozzy Award-winning publication Photo Insider. Matt has been credited with the reinvention of the modern camera store, as well as the country's largest in-store educational program, the Unique University. Unique Photo was named 2008 and 2013 Dealer of the Year by Digital Imaging Reporter magazine. Matt was named the photo industry's 2016 Person of the Year by PMDA. Matt has been so successful in business, but his greatest achievement, in his opinion, is raising 5 children to adulthood as a single dad. He has had a crazy story. He tells that in his #1 best-selling book, Leader of the Pack, how a single dad of 5 led his kids, his business, and himself from disaster to success. It is a really great book. Now, he has appeared on some crazy media like Fox News, NBC Today Show, CBS TV, News 12 New Jersey. He's spoken publicly for organizations like Panasonic, UPS, PMDA, Microsoft, the New Jersey Devils Hockey, and BMW CCA. There's a lot to his story. I'm going to stop wasting time by telling you about him, and we're going to dive into this conversation. So it's beautiful fall out there, so curl up by that fireplace, kick back, relax, and enjoy our conversation with today's guest, Matt Sweetwood. Matt, thank you so much for being on.
It is just a thrill to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been trying to make this episode happen for a while. We did a Facebook Live, which was a lot of fun, but I have a lot to cover in this episode. You have a lot to share. First off, we're going to just dive into your backstory, how you became an entrepreneur, because your journey and your life is fascinating. You've written a book called Leader of the Pack, and it details a lot of the struggles, victories, the pain, the joys of your journey. Tell us a little bit about that journey of entrepreneurship, that journey of life and marrying family, and the responsibilities you had with business and launching crazy cool businesses along the way.
Yeah, it's been a long journey. So, I'm glad we have a few hours on this podcast to go through it. It seems maybe too long. Maybe it's time before I begin, no, I'm just kidding. I have plenty of life left in me and lots of exciting things to do. So I I was trying to engage in the typical American dream, go to school, get your fancy degree, go out, get married, have kids, make some money, the house with the picket fence and the dog in the 2-car garage, or is it 2 dogs in a car, something like that. I tried to do that, and I was going to graduate school, and I ended up sort of realizing that the academic environment that I was in, I was actually in grad school for theoretical mathematics, thought maybe I might want to be a math professor and go off and, and do that kind of thing, and realized that wasn't for me. And I met a woman who was going to be my wife at that moment. And I decided that I wanted to go out and make money.
Yeah.
And because, when you're in academia, that's not the kind of money, in my mind, at least at that point, that supports a family and provides the kind of lifestyle that you want. Anxious to do that, I kind of jumped into our small family business. I did that actually while I was in grad school. Actually, while I was in grad school, I actually wrote all the software that our company ran. I put our first computer system in. Wow. See, I'm really dating myself now. we used to keep our customers on index cards. Wow. And I had to kind of explain to my mom at that time, that index cards, there's probably a better way. And I actually went out and bought an Apple III computer. Okay. Now, I bet most of the audience doesn't know there ever was an Apple III computer.
Yeah.
But it was that computer that they tried to step into the business world, after they had their success with the Apple II. It was not such a success, but it was a really good computer from the fact that it was programmable. And, you could get into the operating system, you could program. It had a whopping 5 megabyte hard drive. I didn't say gigabyte, I said megabyte hard drive.
It's amazing how much we were able to get done with the limited abilities of computers back then. I remember my first computer was it was, of course, what my parents had bought. It was a Tandy 1000, I think. And I remember having to open it up, put the floppy disk in, and use like DOS to prompt it to say, hey, go do this. It's just crazy times back then, what computers were like.
Yeah, I see. I'm a little bit older, so I used 8-inch floppies and 5-inch floppies along the way before we advanced to those modern 3-inch ones. But this Apple computer had a hard drive. It was like the size of a loaf of bread, and it attached a ribbon cable.
Wow!
And it was 5 megabytes. And if you were careful about, which I was, how I programmed the flat file into flat files, there were no databases in that sense back then.
Yeah.
Flat file, I, was able to get all the customer records, all the product records, and fit my program on this thing, and it was crazy fast for that period of time. So anyway, back to my story. I was in grad school. I wrote all the software. I computerized the company, and then I came to work in the company and proceeded to take that company of 4 employees doing local deliveries of photographic supplies. Back then, we sold things like film and batteries and accessories like that, and a few assorted sundries like razor blades and just stuff like that, because our customers were small stores like pharmacies. And we were a very small business at that time.
So for me, I didn't realize that it had been a family business. I thought it was something that you had started. So you grew up around this industry of photography. You grew up around the space of running a business as a part of the family that you grew up in.
Absolutely. And one of the things I always say, people always say, what did you learn from your mother or father, whatever. One of the things I actually carry with me today, my father's gone from this earth many, many years, but I always say that whenever I'm about to negotiate a business deal, I always like to say to myself, now, what would my dad do at this point? Because he had this uncanny ability to negotiate and understand what somebody had paid for something and knew exactly how to negotiate. He was like an amazing negotiator. And I always kind of take that from me. And I have similar things that I take from my mom, too. So, yeah, I grew up, summers and weekends and always being in that sort of business environment, kind of sitting there. And they were real entrepreneurs. Everybody uses the word entrepreneur today, but this is, this was before I think the word entrepreneur even existed. And, they ran businesses and maneuvered. It was all about maneuvering in industries that didn't really want middlemen or didn't want distributors or wholesalers. And, controlled industries back then where the big guys like the Kodaks and the Polaroids, they own the world. They controlled everything. They decided what price. They probably violated every conceivable antitrust law there was at the time. But, that's kind of the way the business was. So, I learned that kind of maneuvering, sort of make it work no matter what. Yeah, it was a culture for me, for sure. Absolutely.
Wow.
I don't know why, for whatever reason, I ended up in grad school trying to, study mathematics. I guess it was somehow, a love in there or passion or something, and then realized that, I prefer putting film in boxes and collecting money for it.
Well, what's strange about that? Let's just kind of step back and look at like Jeff Bezos. He studied complex math, I think, in his Princeton years, if I remember correctly. So that jump from mathematics to business doesn't seem to be as foreign as people would assume it is.
No, I mean, that's an amazing question, because this is something I always, I mentor people and mentor young people so many times. They'll come to me and ask me advice. And I think if they have the aptitude for it, I always say study mathematics.
I don't have the aptitude for it, so I'm out.
No, you'd be surprised.
Maybe it's the patience. I don't have the patience for it.
See, mathematics teaches you an analytical way to solve problems. It's like a muscle. Yeah. If you want to look buff and go to the gym, you go to the gym, you work out, you lift weights. If you want to be good at solving problems, you study mathematics and you build that mental muscle that allows you to dissect, analyze, and sometimes intuitively solve problems. People think that math is very logical and very cold, but actually most of the great and difficult math problems have been solved intuitively, just sort of getting a feel for it, which surprises a lot of people when I say it. And so you build this muscle. And so I think that mathematics is actually a natural, college major, because, I think we'd all kind of agree that in college you don't learn a lot of skills that are directly applicable to making money in the real world. You have to go out there and kind of, get experience doing things. But math gives you brain experience in solving problems, which of course allows you then to, apply that to anything.
I want to come back to Unique Photo. That was the business and it was out of Jersey, right?
That's right. Out of northern Jersey. Spent most of my life in northern Jersey. So yeah,
I don't know if I should say congratulations for surviving or I'm sorry that you had to endure New Jersey, but
can I have both? I'll take both. I get both.
I love that you took a local small family business and turned it into something pretty global and impacted the space of photography for a long time until like massive shifts in what photography is now with digital photography and everything. Tell us a little bit about that journey from going from small business, mom and pop, local business to being a powerhouse in the industry.
I think it's really a story of survival. I know if you read my book, Leader of the Pack, that's really what it is. Yeah. It's really a desire to be successful. I have a saying that's my personal motto, and I try to remind myself of it every day, is just, if you want something, you just have to ask yourself. If you want to succeed, want to be successful, you want whatever it is, you just have to ask yourself, how badly do you want it? And I would say to myself, I want it badly enough. I want to support my family. I want to have a successful business. I want to be, I want to be, that's ultimately successful business person. And if you want it badly enough, you figure out how to. And that's really sort of the thing that drove me all the way, and later on, if we get into my story, I had children to take care of. And for me, love of those children and wanting them to be successful really gave me a lot of motivation. But ultimately, from a business perspective, you take a look at the business you have and you try to figure out where you can go, and you work really hard and smart and try to get it to there. In the case of Unique Photo, we were just selling, small amounts. Like I said, we were running a B2B business, a small B2B business where we were locally distributing, to, like I said, small stores, pharmacies. I think in the middle or early 70s, pharmacies were accounting for 80% of the photo supplies sold in the country.
Well, I remember that growing up, and that's where we would go. We'd go to the local, like CVS or Rite Aid. Rite Aid's based out of where I'm from, and so for us, you do the 1 hour photo, and then of course Walmart became a major player in that space with their photo labs and everything. And I just remember the beauty of like the '90s and going, here's my camera, here's my film, and an hour later, after I've taken photos, I can have real, tangible, touchable photos right there.
Yeah, and even before that, that's sort of you sort of foreshadowed what I was going to talk about with the pharmacy business. So we were selling these pharmacies. I'm going to sort of pivot back to what you just said in a sec.
Yeah,
we were selling these pharmacies, and then of course it was natural. Why are we selling just local? Maybe we can sell across the country. And so I remember walking into UPS. This was sort of when national delivery was just kind of like a new thing.
Well, what year do you think this roughly was? Because I think that puts it into context for some people.
Yeah.
Because you were able to be a part of industry, and you're a couple years older than me, but you still, and I still can remember the world before the internet and the world before our cell phones dominated our lives.
Mm-hmm.
You navigated that transition with the business. What year do you think that this really, what you're talking about here, happened?
Yeah, this is the late 1980s I'm talking about, 88, 89, like that.
Okay.
That's right. No cell phones. No, I had just put in our first computer. Imagine that. It was our first computer system. The IBM PC had just been out for a little while. I think they were probably at Windows 3.1, and to really date ourselves, right? And maybe that window, what was it called? The IBM PC 286 or something, AT
Wow.
or whatever, something like that, a Pentium 286. That was kind of what was there. That's funny, right? I haven't thought of those terms in a long time.
Yeah.
But so I was looking to expand, right? And like you said, there's no technology is very limited at that point. So we looked to expand. I went to UPS. Typically, they were only delivering for larger customers on a national basis.
Yeah.
But I've been known to be persuasive. Maybe got those skills from my mom and dad, and I convinced them to allow us to ship nationally, and that extended us, to be able to attempt to go out there. And I remember we would actually mail catalogs, like these little thin, 10, 12 page paper catalogs, mailing us of 100,000, 200, 500,000 across the country. Of course, our business immediately started to grow. These companies started buying from us because we had product at a wholesale price, and our product mix was really good. And something that I always did along the way, which was focus on customer service. I am a customer service, Nazi. I'm sorry to use that word, but that's really crazy about it. And for me, it's really at the heart of every business. So we expanded our business. That required an upgrade in technology. I put in our first multi-user system. For those techies out there, it was an AT&T 3V2 running Unix System 5. That was a multi-user system, which was really cool at that time.
Yeah.
And that allowed us to have more users on the system. And we slowly started to expand the business. But now pivoting back to what you talked about, I would say by the early 90s, those small stores started getting bought up.
Yeah.
Those independent pharmacies started getting bought up by the Rite Aids and the Walgreens and the Walmarts and all of that stuff. And our B2B business started to go away.
So you have to make a pivot now. You have to transition from what was into a new future. What was that pivot?
So the pivot for me was really, and I've written a few articles on how to reinvent your business.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I just wrote one in a really cool publication called Richtopia. It's a publication based out of England. I give them a little plug because they're really good, really fascinating, online platform called Richtopia. It's how to reinvent your business. And basically what I did was I looked at our strengths. Our strengths were our ability to do customer service, our breadth of inventory. We had large millions of dollars worth of inventory, our ability to ship fast. And then I took a look at what we had. I had dealerships with Kodak and Polaroid and Ilford and all of these places, and then looked at the marketplace and said, what's the problem in the marketplace, and how do I leverage these assets? And what struck me were professional photographers.
Yeah.
Now, professional photographers at that time were buying either from their photo lab, where they took their pictures in to be developed, or they were buying from a camera store. And in either case, they were buying their supplies at retail. Now, when you run a business, you can't buy your principal supply at retail and ultimately make money and be successful.
Right.
So we took our B2B service model, which was geared towards serving businesses. And I said, photographers, they're really business people too. We need to treat them like a business. Let's give them a wholesale price. Let's give them fast, accurate delivery, super customer service, and go right to them. It didn't take long. I would say in 3 or 4 years, we were the number one seller of wedding portrait photographers in the country. I would say by year 5 after we made that pivot, we were Kodak, Fuji, Polaroid, and Ilford's largest professional customers in the country. And that allowed me to go to them and work deals with them to get better pricing, even though to this day they'll take it to their grave. They give everybody the same price. That allowed that to happen. And then that obviously allowed our business to grow quite large. In fact, I wish I remember what year. I should go back. But I would say by about the turn of the century, I love saying that, I love
it's kind of cool.
Right, it's kind of cool. Yeah. By the turn, normally when it used to be, I'm so old, when you used to say the turn of the century, you meant like 1900. And now I mean, Y2K.
Yeah.
My company had a 5 share, which meant we sold 5% of the rolls of film sold in the United States went through our doors, which was basically equivalent to Disney World.
That's so crazy. I want to bring in the personal aspect of what was going on behind the scenes, because it's easy to see somebody and say, look at their success, look at what they've done, look what they've built, and see success as a dollar and numbers quantifier. One of the things that you said earlier on is like, I had to monetize the early on and know that I needed to make a certain amount of money, and that you were driven by success, and success looked like a specific thing for you. But that's not the full picture. There's a personal aspect of it. So my curiosity is, how much of your growth was built out of a desire to succeed and maybe prove to yourself or the world or your parents or whoever that, hey, I can build a successful business, and the success is multi-million-dollar business, one of the largest providers of film and film products to the country, versus survival of what was going on behind the scenes?
I think that you really to get into the personal side of it. I think for me, the defining moment for me was, like I had said before, I had, met the woman that I was going to marry in grad school. I was very young at the time. I was in my early 20s, came back to work. And I ended up having a very, very, difficult and rough ride through that marriage. Mentioned it previously. I had 5 children with my wife, and she unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, she ended up leaving us. And so I was left with, 5 little children to take care of. The mother had left. It was a very tumultuous time, very difficult, crazy stories that, I talk about in my book, Leader of the Pack. And
well, can you tell us the story of the BMW, the the M3?
Yeah, my babies, right? That was my 6th child. Yeah, of course. So this was a situation where, and I'll just sort of frame it in time frame. This is that late 80s time period. Business was really transitioning at that period of time. I remember we were moving. Actually, I was moving facilities. In that last story I told about the business, we obviously outgrew our existing facility, so we had to move into a new facility. All of this was going on. I had 5 children at that point. I'd been married for, actually, this is more like, I would say, early 90s, I should say, because I'm sort of thinking of the transition through. Yeah, so I would say it was early, mid-90s. Business had been transitioning, growing, all of that stuff. We had moved facilities. By that time, we had 5 children, ages 18 months through 8 years old. You can imagine these 5 little blonde-haired, blue-eyed kids, little big, going up in size and stuff like that. And my wife was suffering from some sort of psychological problems, and she became very difficult, very violent, abusive. I hate using those words because they're, you overused a lot, but in this case it was true. And she ended up walking out on us. She ended up walking out on the children. And we went through a period of time where she was moving out of the house. In other words, we were living in this big house, and the kids were in the house, and I was in the house, and she was taking her stuff in and out of the house, coming back. She moved to a town, a few miles away. I think I didn't know it at the time, but to go live with a boyfriend. And you can imagine the scene, right? It's crazy. It's like we talk about business and then we're pivoting to this kind of thing. And she was moving in and out of the house, a very, very difficult time, doing it in front of the children. Everybody was traumatized. I was traumatized. I was terrified. I had no idea what was going on. And I ended up having to hire help to, help me manage the children. And I ended up hiring 2 Israeli women to come into the house, young women, au pairs or nannies, whatever you want to call them, to come into the house and actually help me. And we were in the house one day, and my ex was in the house getting her stuff, and she was acting in a very erratic manner. She actually had kicked a hole in the wall in the house and was screaming. She was screaming at the women that were in the house. And I got a call from them, and they said, your wife is in the house. She's acting erratically. What should we do? We have to go pick up the kids from school in a little bit. It was a very scary kind of time. So I said to them on the phone, I called them on the phone, and I spoke to them on the phone, and I said, just go leave the house. I'll come home. I'll come talk to her. I'll try to, let her scream at me for a little bit, let her get it out of her system, and then she'll leave and go back to her apartment wherever she was moving. And so I went home. I drove home, went into the house, sort of, I don't want to say confronted her. I just walked up, said, hey, what's the matter? She screamed at me, yelling at me, and all that stuff. I realized I couldn't calm her down. So I said, okay, we'll just go and take the kids out. I'll go with my nannies. We'll go pick up the kids. We'll go take them out. And I went out into the driveway into another car that I had. And then if you've ever seen the movie War of the Roses, it was like one of these scenes. I know I'm saying it with a sense of humor. It's a long time ago. But I remember the garage door opens, and in that garage was my silver BMW E36 M3.
Okay, yeah.
So cool car. I put it on the track a few times and so on.
Yeah.
And my wife walks out, and she's dangling the keys in front of me. She walks up to my car in the driveway, my other car, and she's dangling the keys at me. And she's just, you have to realize this is a cold day in the winter in the Northeast. She's like barely wearing any clothing, just completely like oblivious to the cold. And she kind of dangles the keys in front of me and says, you love this car more than you love me. And, I don't know quite what you answer to that at that moment after having been screamed at and holes kicked in walls and leaving in front of the thing. So, you try to pacify her. And I just left. I drove away. And actually, I parked on the street by the house. I didn't really know what to do. And all of a sudden, I see that BMW zooming out of the driveway, out of the garage. And it was a stick shift. She didn't know how to drive a stick shift. And she went bucking down the driveway, up the driveway, and out into the street, almost into an accident as she comes out into the street and zooms off down the road, with the car, lurching and screeching and all of that stuff. And I remember that moment. I was sitting in my car in a state of disbelief.
Wow.
Right? This is the stuff that only happens in movies, right?
Yeah.
Some guy from New Jersey with, who's supposed to be living that, 2-car garage, a white picket fence, dog, and, whatever, 2.5 kids. So I sat there, what to do. I actually reached out to a family member at the time. I think it was my brother I called at the time. And I said, what do you think I should do? He said, call the police. She's going to kill herself or kill somebody or do something.
Yeah.
And I come from, the generation where you don't call police on family. I mean,
right.
Today I think that it's done very easily and very, without much thought. But I did. I called the police. The police came. I mean, for this small town in New Jersey, this was, the highlight of the week. They showed up with, 6 police cars and policemen and all sorts of fanfare and stuff like that. And, so I remember I was in my house. I was talking to the policeman. I was in the kitchen of my house. And all of a sudden I hear a screech in the driveway, and I hear my wife screaming at the policeman.
Oh, wow.
I hear her in the driveway. It's my house. It's my effing house. It's my effing husband. I'm going inside. And I hear them yelling, no, you can't go inside. I guess standard procedure is they keep them separated, keep the parties separated or whatever. Yeah. But she stormed into the house, and they stormed in behind her, and she actually ended up getting in a scuffle with them.
Wow.
there was this scene where it looked like she had grabbed onto one of the officer's guns, in his holster.
No.
And
Yeah.
they pushed her down to the ground. I'll tell you, for me, it was a very conflicted time. It was like I felt like I should jump in and take on the officers. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's your, even with all of this crazy, it's your wife,
Yeah.
So they ended up, handcuffing her, restraining her. I mean, it's a very painful scene. I'm just sort of saying it very factual right now. But this is your wife that they're doing this to, even with all the craziness that was going on. It was all so confusing. They ended up taking her away. They actually roughed her up a little bit, which ended up, if you read my book, ended up being a whole nother set of events, because she ended up claiming that the injuries that she had, I had done to her. And, a few years later, I ended up in the Supreme Court. But you can read about that. You can read about that in my book, Leader of the Pack. And that's the BMW story.
Wow. We're going to take and wrap up this first segment. We always ask the final 3 questions. And some of them we're going to answer in fullness in the next segment, but we're going to go ahead and jump into these. The first question is, how do you find purpose in what you do?
I think for me, it's an internal drive to be successful. People always say you should talk positive self-talk. I think for me, where I've come from, it's been a very difficult ride for me in my life, a very blessed ride. I have, 5 beautiful children I'm very close to. Oh, they're adult now, of course. I mean, but for me, I kind of wake up in the morning and go, you can end today and be a failure, or you can end today and be success. And I really don't want to go to bed at night and say to myself, you failed today. And I think I take it a day at a time like that, and I really drive myself hard. It's just an internal desire to be successful and to be something in your life. For me, that's where my sense of purpose comes in, to do it for my family and for my kids. When they were young, that really drove me, of course.
What is one challenge you're currently working to overcome?
You see, this is a really interesting question, because with all the success that I had along the way in my life, and maybe we'll get to talk about this, I exited that business a few years ago, I'd say 2.5, 3 years ago. I exited that business. And that was a very difficult thing to do after, 28 years in the business. And the challenge that I face in life now is that I'm not done. I have a lot of life and a lot of things left to do. And that's really finding what this, we'll call it, I want to be realistic, the last third of my life is going to look like, and how I can make it the most meaningful.
And our final question for the segment is, what's the next big goal you have for your business?
So we'll get to talk maybe in the next segment about my new business, Plus Now, which I'm the CEO of. And that's to do what I did at Unique Photo and add a few zeros on the end by the time I'm done here.
Super cool. We're going to take a break right here. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about new adventures. We're going to be talking about new seasons of life, and then how you can redefine and rebuild for a better future. We'll be right back. Today's show is sponsored by our friends over at Penji. Penji is your source for unlimited graphic design at a low monthly rate. It's your monthly subscription to the graphic design you want and need. Here's how it works. Once you sign up, you get access to their customer platform where you can create and submit design projects. You tell the Penji team what you want and need created. Maybe a logo, a flyer, a new layout for your website, really whatever you can imagine. Next, you tell them about the colors you want to use, the content that needs to be included in the design, and any other special details you need. Their designers get to work creating a killer design for your project. After that, they send it back to you, and if it's perfect, the project's all done. You get the perfect design for you. But if it isn't quite right, you tell them what revisions you need, and they get back to work creating new revisions until you have exactly what you want. So whether you're a small business, a big corporation, a startup, or even a marketing team, they can help you. And because you're a listener of Jumblethink, they're doing something super special. They're going to give you 15% off your first month. All you have to do is head over to Penji, PENJI.co, and use the code JUMBLE to get 15% off your first month. So head on over, Penji.co, and use that code JUMBLE and start getting the designs you want and need. Now let's jump back into our conversation with Matt Sweetwood. are back with Matt Sweetwood. All right, before we get rolling, we always ask this question. How can people find and connect with you?
I'm easy, being that I was an early social media adopter, in my businesses. I kind of claim my name everywhere. So M Sweetwood, at M Sweetwood on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. My website is msweetwood.com. And I'm really active on social. So anybody tweets at me, Instagrams, contacts me, Facebook, whatever, I contact back at M Sweetwood or msweetwood.com.
We'll have all those links in episode notes, making it easy for you who are listening to go check it out. I really recommend checking out Matt's book. It talks about business. It talks about life. It talks about disasters moving into success. You are in a new season. You were in that transition when we met. You've been pivoting and exiting your unique photo business, and you're stepping into a new future. Tell us a little bit about that journey of going from being a business that you took over from your family, building it into a bigger success, and then exiting it, what that process and that journey's been like.
When I had the opportunity to exit that business, went from a 4-person business to a 100-person business. We were a $100 million company.
Yeah.
Built, it's kind of your baby. Exiting is actually, even though you get a nice check and you get that, it's actually a very emotional event. I always found it ironic that I actually signed the paperwork on my birthday.
Wow.
It wasn't intentional. It just kind of happened like that. And, I signed it on my birthday. But I will tell you that the day after, when I woke up in the morning, I turned to myself and I go, Matt, you're unemployed. The transition was in such a way that they really wanted new people. I was such a dominating force in the business. I really couldn't spend time there because nobody would allow new management to pivot forward. So I really tried to keep away. Obviously I was there if they needed and stuff like that. And I had set up the exit properly. So I sat there and said, what am I going to do? And it was at that moment I said, great, okay, this is your chance. You're going to write your book. You're going to get out there, write articles. Since then, I've written probably 150 articles on business, entrepreneurship, personal branding, thought leadership, parenting, fatherhood, single parenting, dating, just lots of stuff stored up in my brain, that I had to dump so I can make room for, some more thoughts. And, I did that. I wrote, I went out there, and then I, was consulting businesses. I had a lot of connections, people asking me to consult. And then I ended up connecting with another company just a few months afterwards. And it really wasn't my intention. I thought I would take some time off and do this. And I ended up becoming the CEO of a startup called BB. It was a social media network out of Spain. I spent a year and a half there before I left that operation. And then just kind of enjoyed New York City and really enjoyed the consulting business I had, the coaching. I personally mentor younger people, and I've life coached other C-suite executives, and consulting, and just kind of being a jack of all trades and just trying to find the right opportunity, trying to find that, as we ended that last segment, I talked about finding the way to make the last third of my life, the most meaningful, using the experience I had. And I decided after 50-something years in New York, it was time to leave, move to Florida, which is something I did just a few months ago, actually 3 months ago. And I've had a crazy ride here in Florida, which we can talk about, and, finding companies and interacting in a different environment and so on. It's been really exciting, and ended up landing a position as CEO of a late stage startup called Lux Now, which is a really exciting business.
And you got married in the mix of that.
Well, a crazy thing happened along the way. Yeah, that kind of happened. And it's been a little bit of a surprise, but an amazing woman, and, somebody I would, and I was the guy walking around saying, I'm never getting married. I'm never getting married. I don't know.
Well, congratulations. That's a big milestone. And to be at a place where you're able to re-enter into that world and find that significant person after so much of your journey has been overcoming the ramifications of a person who wasn't the greatest person to be married to.
Yeah, I know. I had one of the most difficult divorces in the history of New Jersey. As I mentioned before, there was a side piece that went to the Supreme Court. Just crazy stuff. Custody with children. I ended up with custody of all 5 of the children, and is just a crazy thing. And learning to trust again, which is really what you're alluding to, is obviously difficult for a lot of people. But, you get to a point in your life when you either going to live alone or you're going to live in that sort of cocoon where you're going to learn to trust. And, this time I have a very, very good person with a lot more wisdom in my life. And, and I'm just really enjoying life now. I put myself in a pretty amazing position here in Miami Beach, and what's interesting is, when you come into business, the idea, and this is something I always coach people, is that always stick to what you enjoy, what you're good at, what you know. And one of the things I did in the photo industry, the way I built the business, cameras are a commodity item. Cameras, film, they're commodity items. Is I was very, very good at selling commodity items with experience and with a luxury, flair. And I ended up now in a luxury business. Lux Now is a business where we do peer-to-peer rentals. If you think of something like Airbnb for luxury, we do it for boats and cars and homes, or I should say yachts and exotic and luxury cars and villas. And it's a peer-to-peer network. It's internet-based. It's in a luxury marketplace. It's doing something different than nobody else does. So it's interesting. I really found myself in a place where I'm very comfortable, in a lovely, warm environment, by the way, with no state income tax. Which is, I might throw in a plug for Florida. And, really just an interesting to have sort of started all over again. It's a really hard thing to do that, to start over again with a marriage, to start over again with a business, in a new place, particularly when you're older, but it's really also exciting. And, and this is a chance to do something really, really big. I believe we have a company that's going to have a very large valuation very soon. And I'm building the company, as the CEO. I'm putting the pieces in place that are going to make it all happen. It's just all really exciting.
Yeah, you mentioned Lux Now. I want to talk a little bit about it. I'm a big fan of crazy cool cars. Who doesn't like a picture perfect house and boats? The investment you should never make. But being able to go and rent these things and use your platform is really quite cool. So tell us a little bit about the history of Lux Now and what are you guys setting out to do?
Luxury is attainable. Our slogan is elevate your lifestyle. You probably have a big birthday coming up, right? You're going to be 30 soon or something like that. You want to do something.
I'll be, let's see, I'll be 39 this July.
Okay. So you got to plan for that big 4-0. And when that big 4-0 comes up, I think that you're going to want to do this kind of thing where you go to an exotic location, even in this country, you rent a beautiful beach house, you get yourself that boat for a day, which is a lot better than owning it forever, and drive around. What's your favorite car? What's your favorite exotic car?
Oh, there are too many to list, but I'll give you two.
Go.
I'm a big fan of the Audi R8. I have a TT. I love my TT, but the R8 is just a killer car. And then you've got to go with, a classic Porsche 356.
Yeah, there you go. So you want to rent that car. Those cars are, 6-figure cars, or close to it. You want to have and enjoy that car for a weekend for a very reasonable rate, particularly for a big event. You can simply go on and find somebody, go onto our website or go into our app, we have an iOS app. We'll have the full, upgraded iOS app and Android app within, I would say, about 2 months from now. A very heavy development going on. You'll be able to go on and you'll be able to find somebody who has that car. And you'll be able to actually rent it from them for a day, just like you would kind of do with Airbnb or you would do with a few of the other kinds of peer-to-peer rental sites. You'd be able to find a home, a car, and a boat. We're the only ones who would do it in all three verticals, and we're the only ones doing it in complete luxury. And it's not just exotic cars, too. I mean, sometimes you travel to a location and you want to have a nice car.
Yeah.
And a Ford, whatever from Hertz is not the way to go. You want to rent a Mercedes or you want to rent a BMW or an Audi or a Lexus or something like that. That's a little bit better. Very reasonably priced because it's a marketplace.
Yeah.
And people are going to be, and for people who own properties like this, it's funny, down in Florida, I spent a lot of time here in Naples, absolutely beautiful city. And in Naples, half the people are there half the time.
Yeah.
Now imagine if the other half of the time, those people were able to earn income, from an asset that they thought was passive.
Yeah.
So there's an opportunity to rent that out and actually earn income from it. So we believe we have a marketplace that benefits obviously both the renters and the rentees, and providing a service that's just not available. It's a luxury service, very exciting. Here in Miami, where our headquarters are, it's a glam city. You have celebrities and lots of people coming into the city that want to, enjoy the time here, and we provide those services for them. So it's a really exciting business, very different than, having a warehouse full of, 10 or $20 million worth of photographic supplies. It's a very nice, we're a tech company and a service company, and it's just a beautiful business. And I look at palm trees and, we're really excited, though, in all seriousness, really excited about the business model. Because if you look at valuations of other companies that are doing similar kinds of things, you can see they've done really well. And nobody is, like I said, is doing this in these three verticals and, boats, cars, and homes. And, we're right there on the edge of really doing something big.
I love that you differentiated from other companies. And that was going to be one of my questions, because there are other companies doing similar things, but I didn't think about the fact that there aren't any doing it in three verticals of luxury. And I think that that's a really good way to stand out. So many people say niche down, niche down, niche down, and they look at, oh, I'm just going to do cars, or I'm just going to, but you niched in a unique way, or Lux now niched in a unique way and saying, no, we're not looking at the actual commodity itself. We're looking at an elevated status. So your status is luxury. And then you say, here are different places that are luxury, consumer type things that may be things you want to rent: cars, houses, and boats. And I think that that's a unique way to look at how to create a niche. And instead of saying, the niche is the commodity, you're looking at it as a lifestyle point.
That's correct. And I think we're in the culture right now really supports that experience, that lifestyle kind of event. If you look at a lot of the bigger companies, from everything from Starbucks to Uber to, anybody out there that creates that kind of interaction, they're always looking at those niches within their business that provide luxury or provide experience, or an extra experience, I should say, within their businesses. Because I think it really comes down to people today tend to be a little bit more possession adverse and a little bit more interested in experience, I think, as a general. And so I believe we're moving right into the dynamics of the marketplace like that.
You have two levels of customer. You have the actual person that is renting, and you also have the provider. How are you building both audiences? How are you getting so that there's sustainability? Because if you come in, like if I come in and say, hey, I'd love to rent the new Land Rover Defender, and I come into that and there isn't anyone providing, well, of course, no one's providing it right now because that car isn't out on the market, but let's say it was, and there's not that car there, I'm going to be disappointed. I'm going to move on. So how are you having the supply and the demand that brings it together and finds the sweet point where, as a consumer, I'm getting what I want, and as a provider of that commodity, I'm getting what I want also?
Yeah, so there's a little bit of the magic of the business. Without disclosing too much, I'll simply say that right now, as I said, we have an iOS app that's, it's pretty good. Not amazing, but being honest, it's pretty good. We're going to have amazing apps very shortly. Prototypes are in, working. We see them. They have an amazing development team on them. But while that is going on, so right now, the ability for you to go on and rent is a little bit less. It's a little bit more difficult because of that. But we are acquiring inventory now. So we have a team of people that go out and actually search for inventory, search for people that have inventory, and start to acquire that inventory. And right now, we're sitting at just under $1 billion in inventory.
Wow.
Of people who put stuff up for rent. Now, $1 billion may seem like a lot. Obviously, it is, but it's not enough to really do what you said, which is, hey, I want that Land Rover Defender in, Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah.
And because, it snows there, you better be driving a Land Rover in Chicago.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So, you have to build the inventory to reach what's called critical mass. Mm-hmm. I have an idea of what that is, and we're going to see whether we hit that. But once you reach that, the idea is to reach that critical mass. And then at that moment, start heavily marketing the renter side of the business.
Yeah.
And that's going to be done obviously through more traditional marketing means because you're reaching out to the general population.
I've got to ask, because you're providing this service, what's the one car you dream of?
Okay, so I have this thing. Now, I remember, we talked previously, I had a BMW race car, I had an E36 M3, I had an E46 M3. I've had a 1 Series M Coupe. So I've been a BMW guy. I've raced with the BMW Club. I've done all of that stuff in my life. And I've had an opportunity on numerous occasions, and now the business I'm in allows me to do that. I'm a Ferrari guy.
Okay.
For me, a nice big red Ferrari, I don't care what model number it is. But I've had the chance, because I've been on racetracks, to drive in one on a racetrack.
Mm.
And I refused. I think you're going to like this. I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And they said, well, why? Here's the keys. Go, drive. You're a good driver. Go take it. I'm like, no. I said, the day that I can afford to own a Ferrari, and want to, afford to own it and not care about what it costs, that's the day I'm going to drive a Ferrari. So you asked also what drives me right now. My kids are beautiful and healthy and successful and are having great lives. And I'm in a really good place. And I have a lovely woman in my life and all of that stuff. For me, when I can afford that Ferrari and not even have to negotiate, which I will do anyway, for the price of it, that's when I'm going to drive one. So for me, sorry for the long answer to this one.
No.
But for me, it's going to be a Ferrari. And when you see me driving in it, you're going to know that the valuation of Lux now has hit what it's supposed to be.
I'm going to ask for a favor. I'm going to call it in right now. When you get there, can you take me for a ride?
You're in.
All right. Sweet.
You're in. I'm sure. Do you get motion sick?
No.
No. Okay. You'll be good then. Because I've had a few people tell me that when they get in the car and then, we get out on the track and they're looking green.
No, I'll be fine. I'll be good. I've never gotten motion sickness in my life in any kind of capacity. So I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Okay, we'll see if I can fix that.
Well, if that's your goal, then you probably will, but that's a different story.
I'm showing ignorance of right now. If you're a really good driver in a race car, you're actually really smooth. You don't really get people motion sick.
As they say on Top Gear or the show that's now whatever, Top Gear, fast laps look like slow laps.
That's right.
So
you got it. It should be nice and smooth. Wax on, wax off.
Well, there's a lot more we could talk about. We are running out of time. I found a video, though, that I wanted to talk about before we moved on, because it's such a cultural tipping point, maybe spark point that has impacted us since then. And that was, you interviewed a guy that took the money shot of September 11th for your unique photo. I don't know if you want to call it a vlog or video series. A super cool video because you talked about the story behind the photo and what that looks like. I want to ask, as a person that spent a lot of time in Jersey and then lived in Manhattan, what does September mean to you? What does New York City mean to you?
It's funny you mentioned that. When you sort of talked about that photo, I always take like a deep breath inside, because we all, particularly for us living in North Jersey, my business and my homes and everything were just, a few minutes outside New York City. When 9/11 happened, I know my kids who were in the school system there had other children whose parents died in the towers. And so it has left a permanent, indelible mark on that region, particularly for older people, people who are, past 25 years old or whatever, were around to experience it. And really, New York and New Jersey, that area, Northern Jersey, it's sort of like a BC AD kind of thing.
Yeah.
What happened before, everything before 9/11 and everything after. And when I lived in Manhattan, I actually could look out the window at the 9/11 memorial. I lived in Lower Manhattan.
Yeah. So
for me, it's a very, very personal kind of thing. I recommend everybody going to see the 9/11 memorial down in Lower Manhattan. It is actually an amazing thing they did underground where the towers were. Yeah. But for us, it's really a very, very, very painful memory. And unfortunately, I don't think in many ways a lot of healing has come out of it. Mm. There was a lot of political fights over what memorials should look like and what happened and the way they run the ceremonies. I think people still are very bitter. I know a lot of people here in Miami, in the Florida area, who moved out of New York after that time. They couldn't be there anymore.
Wow.
So this was I don't think people outside the area realize the cataclysm. I actually know somebody who he actually was an officiant at my wedding,
Wow.
who was a stockbroker, and he told this crazy story of how he was living in Lower Manhattan, and how they came out of his building and there was smoke everywhere, and it was just this crazy scene. The police came running down the road and told him he had to get off the island.
Wow.
And the only way off was to jump into the Hudson River, and he got rescued by a police boat, and they watched the power going out. He's traumatized.
Yeah.
He actually still talks about it to this day. He quit his job. He became like a minister kind of thing and changed his life. So I think for all of us that have been through that, we have this sort of indelible mark. And the gentleman that took that picture that you talk about, he has a hard time actually telling the story of how he captured the picture. Wow. Without really, not getting emotional. It's just a very impactful thing that will be with us for the rest of our lives. And, we understand what happened there, and you can talk about, theories and this and that and who's fault and everything, but we all know what happened. And, it left an indelible mark on all of us New York and New Jerseyers.
Well, if you want to hear more of that story and hear it from the photographer and see more of Matt, we're going to put a link to that video in the episode notes. It's worth the watch. I watched it right around September 11th. It popped up in my feed. Maybe you shared it, or
I did. I reshared it again, of course.
Yeah. And so go check that out. It's a really, really, really fascinating story behind the story of September 11th. And there are millions of those stories about how September 11th impacted people both in and out of Manhattan and out of New York City and beyond. So really a cool one to check out. We're going to take a break right here. And when we get back, we are going to do our rapid fire questions. The passion of Jumblethink is pretty simple. We believe all of us were created for amazing things, but few actually choose to step into the dreams and ideas they have. We want to encourage dreamers and idea makers who haven't made that leap to make the leap. So I need your help. I want you to think about that person in your life who's always talking about the big ideas and dreams they have, but for some reason, they never seem to take the leap. Would you share Jumblethink with them? Maybe your favorite episode or just the show in general. Let them know that there are other people just like them that have ideas and dreams that are stepping into a future that they're creating. Would you share the show with them? Think about that family member, that coworker. Maybe even it's the person that you coach your kids' soccer team with. And share Jumblethink with them and help them be encouraged by the stories of people who are just like them. Now let's jump back into today's conversation and our rapid fire questions with Matt Sweetwood.
Placez votre électrophone à portée de votre main.
We are back with Matt Sweetwood to do rapid fire questions. Matt, are you ready?
As long as they're multiple choice, I'm good.
Well, the first question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I want to be a fireman.
What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea or dream and they don't know where to start?
Just start. Do something.
What's one big lie about entrepreneurship you'd like to break?
It's going to be less work or less easier than working for somebody else.
What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
The truth. The lying has become, just basically its standard form. There's no value in the truth. I want to see value in the truth returned.
I love that. What do you want your legacy to be?
I raised 5 successful human beings that contribute positively to this world.
Where do you find inspiration?
God.
What is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read and why?
Oh, come on. I've got to plug my own book. It's got to be Leader of the Pack.
We've talked about success a lot in today's show, but how do you personally define success?
For me, success is when you achieve your goals. You set high goals and you achieve them, whatever they are.
What is one trend you're currently excited about?
I think the trend of experience is that people are moving away from owning things on a large scale and looking for experience and understanding the joy of life.
What is one habit that you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
Organization. being very, very organized.
What is one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
Is that people are very complex, and it's easy to get drawn in by people that are not good for you.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
Golfing. Here's what I'd be doing. I'm going to answer you really. I would be a photographer, like
Okay.
full-time photographer.
And our final rapid fire question, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
Really hit it big. To hit that success number on a company where you've, sold a company or took a company to, world famous kind of numbers.
What is your final thought for all of us listening today?
I think that, and this really goes to, I'm a speaker, I talk on this kind of thing all the time, and that's really success, is that the ability to be successful lies within everybody. It doesn't matter what's happened to you in the past. It doesn't matter your journey. From this moment forward, you have the ability to be successful. It just comes down to asking yourself one question: how badly do you want it?
Matt, it's been a lot of fun having you on to share your story, to hear your insights about business. Thanks so much for hanging in and finally getting the interview in. It's been an honor to have you on.
Yeah, Michael, it has been a thrill, amazing interview, really a pleasure. I'm honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Once again, we want to thank our friend Matt Sweetwood for taking time out and being on the show today. Go check out what he is doing. I think you're going to really love it, whether it's his book or connecting through social media channels. He's sharing a lot of great stuff and amazing stories. We also want to thank our friends over at Penji. Go check them out, penji.co. Use that code JUMBLE. Get 15% off your first month of getting the design you want. We also want to thank you for tuning into today's show. It means the world to us that you would listen to Jumble Think. And I hope it's encouraged you to find the thing you were created to do, to step out and take the risk to step into the dreams and ideas you have. We believe you were created for something awesome. I hope you believe that you were created for something awesome. And now it's your turn. Get out there, dream big, and change the world around you.
Pourtant, il n'est qu'un commencement. Nous avons voulu en faire connaître la force. Vous verrez comment un simple disque peut aller plus loin que vous ne l'auriez imaginé. Mettez-vous dans une tenue légère. Ôtez tout ce qui peut vous gêner ou tirer votre attention. Cherchez la meilleure position. Les bras et les jambes légèrement espacés. Étirez-vous doucement, mais complètement. En avant, en arrière, sur les côtés. Vous êtes une autre personne. Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.